What's going on, guys? Do you ever sit and wonder what it might be like to be one of the best college baseball players in the country, play championship caliber baseball on a national stage, and play for one of the most dominant coaches who also has a track record of developing major league talent? Well, if that is you, then today you're in for a treat. I am joined by 2023 national champion and national coach of the year, Jay Johnson, head coach of the LSU Tigers. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing great. Awesome to be on with you.
I appreciate that. How's everything going? I know. As we kind of creep closer to September, everything starts to pick back up. What's life like for you right now?
It's always busy, and that's okay by me. It's a pretty simple blueprint, that we have here, which is recruit the best players we possibly can, develop them so not only they can help LSU win, but achieve their dream of becoming a major league player someday. Very much a group or an organization that focus on what's important, like right now, and then have the self-discipline to kind of repeat that process over and over. I don't find too many slow spots in the calendar. I got to be honest with you.
I bet. I bet. I mean, what you were just talking about, your recruiting and your development are things that I wanted to touch on. I definitely wanted to ask you some things about your leadership as well. Obviously, you've had an insane track record of success. Obviously, prior to being at LSU, you were at Arizona, man. Fantastic career. Um, right off the bat, I wanted to just ask you, how do you continue developing a winning culture with so many moving parts? So you guys obviously had 22 players drafted in the last 2 years, bunch of studs. You have guys coming in with the portal, you're recruiting guys. How do you continue to put forth a winning culture with your guys?
Well, it's a great question and probably more challenging to answer today than any point in my entire career because I've always looked at rule changes and things that go on, and instead of complaining about them or saying what I like or I don't like, it's like, okay, let me know what it is, and then let me try to figure out how to utilize what we are and who we are within those rules to create a competitive advantage. And now it's really, really hard to do that. So I think being adaptable, and I think you're building two things at the same time. You're building a team every single year while you're trying to build a program. Program wise, we're always going to fall back on three simple things of being incredibly fundamentally sound. Now, that could mean the players executing the fundamentals of baseball, that could mean the coaching staff executing the fundamentals of recruiting at the highest possible level, of developing players at the highest possible level. Competing, that's always the benchmark for me. Compete is kind of the second level of that. It can never be more important to the opposing team, the opposing players, the opposing coaches than it is to us. Doesn't mean we're always going to win, but it can never be more important that we do everything that we can to get the result to the opponent than it is to us. And then, just really focusing on having strong character, within your organization. And character is really simple. It's decision making. Do you have people around you that make the right decisions? Whether it's coaches, players, administrators. And if you have those three things in line, they've always been the things that I've built our program around. Those are sustainable. Now, what you have to do is be adaptable when you have a team, and each team is different. I'm really excited about this year coming up. We only have 12 players that played at all for us last year. So it's the highest volume of turnover that I've ever had. Now, with that, there's a lot of excitement in those 12 players are probably the best players that are the highest character guys that we had in the program last year. Then you have the transfer portal, which we had to do more than probably I would like because of those aforementioned 22 players going on to pro baseball over the last 2 years, and then a really high level recruiting class. And so blending that all together, how this team takes shape will probably be different than the last couple. And so we'll have our eyes open for those things and kind of build it as we go.
What's going on, everybody? We as baseball players, we as athletes, we all have something in common that we all share with one another. At some point, our careers are going to come to an end. whether we play 15 years in the league or whether we don't make it past high school or college. This is called the Money Playbook. So this teaches financial concepts for student athletes, for professional athletes. It's got a bunch of financial concepts in there that I didn't learn until I was done playing. Go on over to Amazon and check it out. It's called The Money Playbook. It's written by Mark Tepper, who is an NFLPA registered investment advisor. So he has worked with a plethora of professional athletes. Like I said, go to Amazon. We'll leave the link in the bio and the description of this episode. It's a must-have. Check it out. Let me know what you think. You guys are a storied program. A lot of eyes on you. Obviously, with much power comes a lot of you know, there's a whole lot of pressure on you guys. Obviously, like being a national champion in 2023, I don't know necessarily what that's like. I'm sure there is a ton of pressure on you guys last year in 2024, maybe to follow that up. You guys followed it up, obviously, with a what was that, 43-23 year. It's fantastic, man. Obviously, didn't go as far as you guys would have hoped. But you mentioned something about the rule changes, not complaining, just going with the flow, and more specifically the transfer portal. So obviously the game is changing. Some rule changes with some roster stuff, scholarships. Man, what is your take on the transfer portal and what it's doing today to today's game?
Yeah, I think it's great that the players have options. I mean, none of us would have jobs if there was not players. And so I'm totally okay with that side of it. If you asked me what my preference is, I would prefer to go back to the time where it wasn't there, simply because I love building programs, from within. I love developing players.
Love it.
With that being said, we have a nice national championship trophy and a ring sitting over there, largely because of the transfer portal.
I get it.
Being able to get a Paul Skenes, a Tommy White. My first year, which was kind of our foundation year here, we completely relied on it. When you talk about, Jacob Berry, who was the first college player taken, came over with me from Arizona.
Sixth pick,
Riley,
right?
yes, yeah, exactly. Riley Cooper, same thing, came over, and I mean, we don't win the national championship last year without having Riley Cooper. So I'm grateful for what it's brought to LSU baseball. That being said, it's changed the game a lot, and it's probably taken, schools like ours or the SEC to maybe even a different level than college baseball as a whole. And so, I learned quickly as soon as I sat down in this chair, it was like, okay, Texas A&M's going and grabbing all these guys, Arkansas is grabbing all these guys. Like, this is going to be a thing. And then just kind of evaluating it year to year is, what do you need? The previous couple years, we've only needed about 5 players. Well, this year we need to double that because of the amount of players that we've sent to pro baseball. So instead of ignoring it, you embrace it and you build your team the best that you can.
Love that. So, what is it like playing for Jay Johnson at a program like LSU? What is the vibe like? What's the culture like? Are the players laid back? Is it kind of uptight? Is it these guys don't want to make a mistake? Like, if I were able to play for you in college, man, I would be extremely nervous, right? Obviously, like the level of success, I'm sure is demanded, right? It's expected to play for a coach like you at a program like yours, man. What is it like playing for you at LSU?
Well, playing at LSU is the best. I mean, we have 13,000 fans a game. We lead the country in attendance every year. The energy around the program is unmatched. And it's not to say there's not great counterparts, because there is across college baseball, within the league, obviously a Mississippi State, a Texas A&M, and Arkansas. Those guys provide, great home fields as well. Everybody in our league has a beautiful stadium. I think our fans make this a unique, experience. As far as like playing for me, like kind of what I talk about is, we're here. We want to go to Omaha. We want to continue this great tradition, that was built by Skip Bertman, forever, for as long as I'm coaching. I want to just continue to add and give Louisiana a baseball program that they're very proud of, that brand of baseball. And that happens through bringing the right players in and then developing them to achieve their dream of being a major leaguer someday. So how do you do that? I mean, it's relentless work. It's bringing in players of the right character. And kind of my saying is, you can't be fitting baseball into your life and playing for me. You're kind of got to build your life around baseball, and therefore it's a little bit blue collar in that regard. But we have a lot of fun as well. I'm super intense, but I think if you ask the players, they enjoy being here in the competitive environment they have, where they feel like they're getting better and they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And really, maybe for the only time in their baseball career, because professional baseball is frankly an individual sport. And a lot of these things these kids do now while we're recruiting them, it's kind of only built around them. Here, you are a part of something a little bigger than yourself. So I think it's the best place to play, and we're about developing players.
Love that. So with that right there, about the development with those players, we just touched on it. 22 players drafted in the last 2 years, man. So you are attracting and recruiting the best talent around the country, whether it is high school talent, transfer portal, anything. Man, what is the secret to bringing in these top tier players, teaching them how to win, and then kind of pushing them forward and propelling them into the professional ranks? Is it the way you guys go about your business in practice? Is it kind of like the excellent standard that maybe you're setting? Like, what is the secret sauce, man, to pumping out 22 draft picks in 2 years?
Yeah. I think it starts with identifying the right player. And there's certainly a skill set that you need to compete at the top of the SEC, which is the top of college baseball. Like, it can't just be about talent. It's talent and the right person and mindset. And the tricky part with that is you're competing against those other elite teams in the league. You know what I mean? Like a Tennessee, a Florida, an Arkansas. And I mean, basically everybody in our league is elite. So you're competing against those teams. So it's like finding the talent that's also the right player. But then we're all also competing against Major League Baseball, because the kid can sign out of high school. So that's not an exact science, but it's working really hard there. And we have a great staff, that helps with that. As far as developing them to win, I think, again, it comes back to very simple fundamentals of controlling the strike zone from the mound, controlling the strike zone from the batter's box, controlling the ball on defense, and then like that competitiveness, like I said, of it's never more important to anybody else. And what's unique about here, I think, is we are a baseball place. We are about development, and we're also about winning. I think a lot of programs will separate one or the other, but I want to win because we develop. And then ultimately, when they go to professional baseball, once you get to the big leagues, winning really, really matters. And so if they've been exposed to a place like this and developed enough to be able to physically do it, our players are really attractive for Major League Baseball.
I love that. I love that. So, hitting on Major League Baseball, man, you guys made history. 2023, the number 1 and number 2 overall pick, being from LSU, obviously, Paul Skenes and Mr. Dylan Crews. So I have to ask about Paul Skenes, man. I have to ask about him. Obviously, like, that dude is a stud. He's an absolute stud. I've heard so much. I've seen so much. Just seeing how he prepares pregame, how he pitches, man. Like, can you just elaborate a little bit on what it was like to coach a man of that caliber at LSU? How did he go about his business? Like, what was just different about him? Obviously, his physical attributes were insane and off the charts, man. But like, what was he emotionally? What was he like mindset wise? How was he different than everybody else?
The best way I can explain it is to, like, when Paul would come into my office for a meeting, I knew I had to be on top of my stuff, because if I wasn't, I knew this is a person and a player that would be able to like sniff that
I
out.
love
But
that.
I think in another best way I can describe it is this. So I got a chance. I was out recruiting in California last week, and he had just happened to be pitching against the Dodgers. So got a chance to go watch the game, talk to him for 10 minutes after the game, and nothing had changed. And that just describes who Paul is. You know what I mean? He is the ultimate elite person, competitor, team guy. Like, I knew we were getting a weekend style, top of the rotation type pitcher when he transferred here. I don't know in my wildest dreams if I knew, hey, we're getting the guy that's going to be starting the All-Star game like 13 months later. That's all him. But I knew we were getting a special dude, and like he exceeded this high expectation of character like no player I've ever had.
I love that. Would you say that the best players that you've coached or that you've been around have been on your teams? Would you say that they are usually, disciplined and consistent like that? Like, what separates the best players that you've had on your teams from those that are obviously SEC baseball players are top tier and the best baseball players in college baseball? But what separates the best players that you've had from the players that obviously remain where they're at?
A lot of guys have talent. Not all of them take that talent and turn it into usable skill to help their team win or dominate the game. The ones that are consistent in controllable things with character that have that talent, that's how you separate and have a national championship caliber team or an Omaha caliber team. And that's what we had with Paul, Dylan Crews, a hitter like Cade Beloso, like Gavin Dugas, another pitcher like Ty Floyd, Griffin Herring, Gavin Guidry. Like the whole team was just made up of substance and had the guys at the top like just demanded so much without saying a word, but just by how they went about everything. And that was a separator. I love that Chicago Bulls documentary and talking about Michael Jordan and the competitiveness of the practices. And, when he said, the one thing all of his teammates would say about Michael Jordan is he would never ask you to do something he wouldn't be able to do himself. And to me, that's always the best players. Austin Wells, who's now the catcher for the New York Yankees at Arizona, Cesar Salazar, big league catcher with the Astros. Those guys, the common thread of all these big leaguers is they were high talent and literally no maintenance type players.
I love that. You were rifling off some dudes right there. You were just naming some dudes, and I've been able to share the locker room in a professional setting with some guys that you have coached previously, mostly at Arizona, that were just top tier human beings, absolute studs. That's awesome, man. I love to hear all that. What would you say is the hardest part of your job? Being where you're at, being up on the pedestal that you're at, all eyes are on you. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure, man. What do you say is the hardest part about being Jay Johnson?
I think honestly, like practicing what I preach in terms of having total focus on the exact task at hand at that time. And you get pulled in a number of different directions here because so many people care about LSU and LSU baseball. But I have a great boss in Scott Woodward. And I remember when we finalized the deal, I was like, I will represent you and this program in a first class manner all the time and make myself available. But you're hiring me to recruit the very best players and develop them. And so you will see a very laser focus sometimes. So don't mistake that to like, I'm indifferent about all this other stuff that goes on here. But this is the system. And this is what I demand of the players. Therefore, I have to demand it of myself. So, I think the older I get, continuing to look at everything as like a challenge as opposed to, a pain in the what,
Yeah,
what I
a
mean?
threat.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the thing I constantly remind myself. And then, making it about the players. And again, like that's something I think has always been my sweet spot or maybe separator as a coach. Like they can get what they want out of this thing and the program can succeed. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And so I think probably my greatest point of pride is, yeah, we've won the national championship. We've made 3 trips to Omaha. But like a player like Cal Stevenson right now, who's 5'9", is in the major leagues with the Philadelphia Phillies, laying down a perfect bunt to help them win a big game as they're in a pennant race. Or a Jojo Romero, who I coached at Nevada, is, coming out of the pen against the Dodgers and punching out Otani. You know what I mean? Like
Amazing.
nobody knew who these guys were, when they were at the University of Nevada or Arizona. And then to see that they're still going, like that's kind of my fuel to get past, some of the hurdles.
Got you. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So obviously, yeah, like you just talked about, there are hurdles in every sort of situation, but especially kind of where you're at. So if you could look back on maybe like 20-year-old Jay Johnson, and so you were a head coach, 27 years old, right? So if you could give 20-year-old self, your 20-year-old self advice, man, what's the best piece of advice that you would give?
I think make sure you have really good mentors that know what your goals are and then have some sense of how to help you achieve them. I can think back to of just a few conversations in my life that I didn't want to do, maybe what they were encouraging me to do with their experience, but having those people around me allowed me to see like a bigger picture and then make the right move. Like at 27, I'm the head coach at my alma mater, Point Loma Nazarene University, most beautiful school in the world, fields right on the Pacific Ocean. We were rolling. Like I didn't want to leave, but I had a few people saying like, if you want to be a Division I coach, like if you want to be a head coach eventually at a program that can go to Omaha and compete for a national championship, you cannot stay here and do this. Nobody is going to hire you as you continue to win 40 games. Like you need to get in, you need to learn the difference in recruiting at that level. You need to learn the difference in development and coaching at that level. And I did. And then I was really fortunate, to go work for the right person that really showed me the way. And that when I became a head coach, I believe I was really prepared. Whereas the 27-year-old was like, I want it now, I want it now, I want it now. But being respectful of the grind or the steps. Same thing we ask our players to do. Like I feel like I was blessed to have people around me that helped me do that. So make sure you have good mentors and listen more than you talk when you're a young coach.
I love that. Again, we are here with Jay Johnson, head coach for LSU. Coach, just a couple more questions I got for you, man. I'd love to talk a little bit more, dive deeper into the recruiting aspect of things. Obviously, you have the top players in college baseball that either want to play for your program or are playing for your program. Obviously, you can kind of look back at the last 3 seasons that you've been at the helm, and you can see that. So there are players. All over the country that want to play for you, but there are only so many spots. There's limited roster availability, man. Would you say, for the most part, I know you just elaborated kind of on being out in California and doing some recruiting. You saw Paul Skenes out there, man. Do you find these kids or do they find you? Will they come and reach out, or do you have to go find them? Obviously, being at a program of your level, everybody's searching for you, right?
Yeah, I think, I'll just call, the top of college baseball or the SEC right now. And then there's other great programs. Like, I mean, came from one at Arizona, North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, TCU. There's all these great programs out there. I think for us, what I've been able to do over a long period of time is build a really solid network of people who know who the best players are and that are aware of what it takes to be successful or fit at this place. I think maybe the benefit of being at LSU is like there's a general understanding amongst everybody that this is not for everybody. And so it's helped funnel that a little bit. Now, with that being said, is we are recruiting the entire country. And that's something that's new for me. I was very proud at Arizona of like we had a very specific niche of California, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada. Like that's where our team was going to come from. And as long as I did a good job in the major geographic regions of the West, we were going to be a competitive team. Here it's different and it's national and you're dealing with advisors and agents all the time, the top end travel ball coaches. And it's so weird to say sometimes it ends up being other Division I coaches now with the transfer portal. And I've gotten calls from coaches I respect as much as anybody in the country. It's like, hey, I have a guy. He's going to leave. I don't want him to leave, but if he is, I would like him to go play for you. And
Wow.
that's 1000% happened, and thankfully so. Like you mentioned, Paul, Coach Kaz at Air Force is one of the best people in the business. And he didn't tell Paul, hey, to go to LSU, but he did say this is some place that you should look at, and that mattered a ton, and so pretty crazy that that's what it's come to now, but just got to adapt with the new things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Appreciate you elaborating on that. Just what couple more. Just talk about high school players. Obviously, like with the transfer portal, obviously with being one of the top respected programs in the country, spots are even more limited for these high school players, man. How would you say that these high school players get seen the most by you and your staff? Would you say that these showcases are a pretty solid way to get seen by you guys, or is it more so like uh, and I don't know, travel ball and stuff, filling out the recruiting questionnaire, reaching out to you guys, setting the schedule. Like, how would you say that is the most effective way of
Yeah,
recruiting that?
yeah, it's different for every guy, but I think first off is having a skill set that we're going to pay attention to, being connected to somebody that is connected to us. But remember, if that skill set isn't present, it doesn't matter who you're connected to. So my first advice would be focus on development, focus on the process of becoming the best player that you possibly can be. And by doing that, you'll probably create more options for yourself. I think we're a very instant gratification society, like I said, before, now, where the best thing a player can do is develop themselves. And then if you develop yourself and you're around, the right type of people, and so choosing your circle wisely is really important, for the right reasons, mainly to help develop you, and then let your play speak for itself. And we have players from all kinds of different walks, whether it was junior college, high school, guys we found because of their travel ball coach, the transfer portal. And then the last thing I would say is this, I didn't go to an LSU. You know what I mean? I tried to play football as long as I could, while playing baseball. And I didn't have that specialized training, but there was a place for me to play second base and finish a 5-year college career that set me on this path. So it doesn't have to be LSU. It doesn't have to be Tennessee or Texas. There's great places to play. So don't just get short-sighted, I guess.
Absolutely, that makes a ton of sense, Coach. So you mentioned skill set, you mentioned development. What would you say are the physical attributes off the top of your head, man, that you look for in a high school player that you could see and be like, hey, he would be a possibility here?
Yeah, I mean, as a 5'7" dude, it's really tough for me to admit it, but just the physical size and strength thing, like human beings are just bigger now. Like I was watching an All American game on TV where we had 7 recruits playing in it. It's kind of like the McDonald's basketball All American game, and on the entire field, I don't think there was a guy shorter than 6'2" and 200 pounds. And it's remarkable. But, you have the hand you're dealt. It's okay to be smaller in baseball, but you have to be strong. So continue to develop strength, but build strength in a way that you can move the way you need to be an elite player, whether that's as a pitcher moving down the mound, a hitter in the box, or a defender on the field, and being super deliberate about your training. Like one of the big investments we make here at LSU is in food and in nutrition, to ensure we're giving our players the best chance to develop physically. So I would say developing physically and then developing mentally, having a perspective. Like the game is really hard, and being able to not just learn from failure, but overcome it quickly and move on to the next play. And that's something as a coach, spent my entire life in athletics. Like I still have to work on, you know what I mean? Is not letting a play, an inning or a game affect me, even as a leader going forward. As a player, if you can't do that, you have no chance. So very general, but developing physically, developing mentally, and developing the specific skills, whether it's if you're a contact hitter, line drive, understand that, develop into your power later. If you're a pitcher executing 3 pitches for strikes, understanding the skill that you need to build while you've developed physically and mentally.
Love that. And then, man, I got one more question for you. So you touched on it a little bit, right? You would love to potentially bring in a high school player if you had the option. Obviously, like you're playing the hand that you're dealt. You just had a ton of players go these past 2 years. So if you need a player now, you're going to bring somebody in from the portal if that's available to you. If you had the option, right? If you could bring in a player from high school, or you had a proven junior college player that maybe wanted to come in, transfer in? If it was maybe a fourth outfielder option or a fifth infielder, like which one would you go for?
As far as transfer high school player
Yes, sir.
yeah, I think my answer would be whatever the team needs the most at that time. Sometimes you may need to improve your foundation of your team, which I always will believe that will be through high school players. If you can get them through the draft, get them to choose the college path versus signing out of high school, and they're mentally strong enough by having them in our environment for 3 years, we believe they can make them better. We can make them better. There's certain situations like we really needed to improve the pitching staff when we got here, and we needed older pitchers that could make impact right now. So in that instance, the transfer was better. So I don't have one way. It's my job is to do the best for LSU baseball, and that's always what I make those decisions on.
I love that. I love that. Love the answer. Makes a ton of sense to me. Is there something when you are looking at these players, if it may make sense, the most sense for LSU, is there a recruiting red flag where you go and see a dude and you're like, no?
I think honestly, and this is going to be a different answer than what you're asking, but like if I feel like they're completely sold out to, hey, they're going to just sign a pro contract, we try to stay away from those because we're not in it for the hype of the thing. We're in it for the substance. A lot of times I'll have conversations with maybe a guy at this point in the recruiting process that's breaking off from another school and going to come with us. One of the things I'll say to them is I don't want to be their bargaining chip for the draft. I want them to choose that this is option number one. And that if something happens where Connor Griffin, who was the ninth pick, I think he was the first high school player taken for the Pirates, signed for $6.5 million. Like, I wasn't born yesterday. Like, I understand that. I still think we can develop him better, but I understand what that money means. They're going to make sure that he's going to make it to the big leagues. That's different. But I always want to be a plan A. So if I don't feel like we're plan A, we're plan B to professional baseball, that's probably my big red flag.
Yeah, that fires me up, Coach. That's all I got for you. I'm so grateful for your time. Again, we are here with Jay Johnson, the 2023 national champion and national coach of the year. Coach, I'm so grateful for your time, man. I'm looking forward to seeing the continued success with you and your boys this year, man. I'll be watching. I know everybody in the audience will be watching. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the information that you're giving us, man.
You got it. Thanks, Ian.
Yes, sir. Take care, Coach.